It was in the spring that Visney presented himself at the Roxy Cinema and asked for a job. He was 14. He had the light, soft brown skin of the hill people, with black eyes and dark, unruly hair. He had walked into the hill station from his village, which lay over 30 miles away, behind two ranges of mountains. After his father's death, it had been decided that Visney should go into the town to find work, while his mother, sister, and two small brothers looked after their fields in Garhwal, scraping a scant living from the rocky soil. The Roxy was the hill station's only cinema, and remained open for 6 months in the year, from April to October. During this period it did good business, for the town was crowded with tourists and holidaymakers who had come up from the plains to escape the heat. But during the winter months the town was deserted, the shops and restaurants would be closed, and if one walked a little way out of the town one was more likely to meet a bear than a human being. When Visney came into town, after a day and a half's walking, he was wearing a thin cotton shirt, short pants, and an old pair of tennis shoes. The days were warm and sunny, and this clothing was sufficient. In the bag he carried with him was a blanket, and in his shirt pocket he had 6 rupees, and that was all. At first he had tried to get work in a tea shop, but they didn't need any more helpers. On his second day in town, after spending the night in a shed meant for rickshaw pullers, he went to the cinema, where the proprietor of the cinema's tea stall engaged him. The proprietor was in need of a new boy, having just sacked the previous one for his general clumsiness. Visney's job was to help prepare tea and samosas, serve refreshments to the public during intervals in the film, and later wash up the plates and cups. His pay would be 30 rupees a month, including as much free tea as he could drink. Visney went to work immediately, and it was not long before he was as well versed in his duties as the other two tea boys, Chitru and Ram Parshad. Chitru was a lazy good for nothing who always tried to place the brunt of his work on someone else's shoulders, but he was generous, and had lent Visney 5 rupees during the first week. Ram Parshad, besides being a tea boy, had the enviable job of being the poster boy as well. He was paid extra for this, as the cinema was closed till 3 in the afternoon. Ram Parshad was engaged either in pushing the big poster board around the town, or sticking posters on convenient walls. It keeps the walls from falling down, he said. This suited him nicely, as he could go where he liked, visit friends, and stop in at restaurants for a smoke, a chat or a light meal. Chitru had relatives in town and slept at their house. Both Visney and Ram Parshad were on their own and had to sleep at the cinema. They were not provided with any accommodation. The hall was closed at night, after the last show, so it was not possible for them to settle down comfortably in the expensive seats, as they would have liked. They had to sleep in the open foyer, near the ticket office, where they were often at the mercy of icy Himalayan winds. But Ram Parshad made things comfortable by setting his poster board at an angle to the wall, which gave them a small alcove where they could sleep protected from the wind. As Visney and Ram Parshad had only one blanket each, and the nights were cold, they placed their blankets together and rolled themselves into a warm, round ball. Ram Parshad smoked innumerable bidis, and his breath, which held the aroma, was at first disconcerting to Visney, but Visney soon got used to this, as he got used to Ram Parshad's Many unhygienic habits, like bathing only once a month and using his finger to clean his teeth about once a week. Every morning Visni scrubbed his teeth with a twig of neem and soaped himself well at the public tap. Ram Parshad was pleased by the freshness of Visni's body and enjoyed watching him bathe, and sometimes even condescended to rub his friend's body with mustard oil, but he was supremely indifferent to his own body, perhaps the dirt he accumulated on it kept him warm on cold nights. That, at any rate, was the explanation he gave for his slovenliness. Despite all this, Visni could not help liking Ram Parshad for his good humor, unselfish nature, and even a little for his untidiness, which made him attractive in an unattractive way. The new pictures started their run on a Friday, and over the weekend large crowds would gather at the cinema, clamoring for tickets. There was quite a black market in tickets, as the first comers would buy up about 2 dozen and then sell them at higher prices to people who stood little chance of getting in. This would anger others in the crowd. People would start shouting and pushing and climbing over one another's heads. Sometimes there would be a free-for-all, and if a lone policeman attempted to bring about order, he might find himself at the bottom of a heap of struggling bodies. Visni was alarmed when he first saw this happen, but Ram Parshad assured him that it took place regularly every weekend, and that none of the hostility was directed at the boys. But in the hall itself, when Visni brought the tea around, some of the people, not confined to the cheaper seats, would be rude and disagreeable. When Visni spilled some tea over an aggressive college student's shoes, he received a vicious kick on the shin. He complained to the tea stall proprietor, but his employer said, "The customer is always right. You should have got out of the way in time." As he began to get used to the life and to the tempo of his work, Visni found himself taking an interest in his patrons. He feared the occupants of the cheaper seats, whose language was often free and uninhibited. He was timid and shy of the people in the balcony, and usually left them to chitru, but he felt quite happy with the people in between, those who were neither very crude nor very sophisticated, though they certainly had peculiarities of their own. There was, for instance, the large gentleman with the soup strainer moustache, who drank his tea from the saucer. When he drank, his lips worked on the principle of a suction pump, and the tea, after some brief agitation in the saucer, would disappear in a matter of seconds. Visni often wondered if there was something lurking in the forests of that gentleman's upper lip, something that would suddenly spring out and fall upon him. The boys took great pleasure in exchanging anecdotes about the eccentricities of some customers. Visni had never seen such bright, painted women before. The girls in his village had been healthy and good-looking, but they did not smell and talk as mysteriously as these women who had come up from the plains for the summer season. Dressed in fine clothes, painted and perfumed, they chattered about inconsequentials of vast importance, and never gave Visni more than a brief, bored glance. Middle-aged women were more inclined to notice him, and favored him with kind words and sometimes a small tip when he took away the cups. He found he could make a rupee or two every week in tips, and when he received his first month's pay, he sent half of it home. Visni never had a holiday, but in the mornings he was free, and then he would join other boys in flying kites from the top of the hill, or he would play football on the Maidan. Football was great fun, especially during the monsoon rains, when the field became a bog, the football slippery and elusive. Then there was kabaddi, a vigorous game that called for strong legs and healthy lungs, and occasional dips in the cool stream that tumbled down the mountain into the valley. Whenever one of Visney's playmates came to a picture, Visney would slip him a free cup of tea. Soon he had an extensive knowledge of films and film stars, and knew the lyrics of all the popular songs. Once he even managed to pinch a couple of photo stills and sold them to a well-to-do young student for 5 rupees. And so, throughout the summer, life carried on more or less on the same even keel. As the night show finished at about 12, Visney would wake late in the morning. He would eat with Ram Parshad, cooking his own food, sharing the expenses. This was their only big meal. The rest was made up of snacks during the film time, and innumerable cups of tea. The cinema did well throughout the summer, but when the monsoon rains set in, the town began to empty. A thick mist lay over the town for days on end. When the rains passed, and the mists cleared, an autumn wind came whispering through the pine trees. Visney couldn't sleep so well, as the cold crept through the blankets and into his bones. At the end of September, the manager of the Roxy gave everyone a week's notice, a week's pay, and announced that the cinema was closing for winter months. Ram Parshad said, "I'm going down to the plains to find work. I shall come back next year." "What about you, Visney? Why don't you come with me? It's easier to find work in the plains." "I'm going home," said Visney. "I don't know if I will come back next season. I have land of my own. I think it is better to work on my own land, even if it is more difficult." "I like the towns," said Ram Parshad. "I like the shops and people and lots of noise. I will never go back to my village again. There is no money to be made there." Ram Parshad made a bundle of his things and set out on foot for the railway terminus. At the bottom of the hill, Chitru went to his relatives to hibernate until the spring came. Visney rolled up his blanket, and with the money he had saved, bought himself a pair of chappal. His old shoes had worn away, compelling him to go barefoot for a month. It snowed during his last night in town. He slept alone behind the poster board, for Ram Parshad had gone. The wind blew the snowflakes into the open foyer, and went whistling down the still, deserted streets. In the morning, Visney opened his eyes on a world of dazzling white. The snow was piled high against the poster board, obscuring most of the glamorous film actors who smiled emptily at the unresponsive mountains. Visney went to a tea shop, drank a glass of hot sweet tea, and ate 2 buns. Then he set out on his march home. As his village lay further to the north, he went deeper into the snow. His feet were blue with the cold, and after some time he wasn't conscious of having any feet at all. He trudged through the forests all day, stopping only at villages to take refreshment. By nightfall he was still 10 miles from home. But he had fallen in with other travelers, mule drivers mostly, and with them he found shelter in a small village. They built a fire and crowded round it, and each man spoke of his home, and someone sang, and someone told a story of evil spirits and mysterious disappearances, happenings that were peculiar to that area. Visney felt at home with these strong, simple men, and fell asleep listening to their tales. In the morning they parted and went different ways. It was almost noon when Visni reached his village. The fields were covered with snow, and the mountain stream that passed through the village was in full spate. As he climbed the hill to his house, it was the highest house in the village, he heard the sound of barking, and his mother's big black bhotia dog came bounding towards him. Over the snow, the dog jumped on him and licked his face, and then went bounding back to the house to tell the others. Visni's smallest brother saw him next, and turned and ran indoors, shouting, "Visni has come! Visni has come!" The other brother ran out of the house, shouting, "Visni, Visni!" Visni came walking through the fields, and he didn't hurry, he didn't run, though he saw his mother and sister standing in front of the house, waiting for him. There was no need to hurry now. He would be with them for a long time, and the manager of the Roxy would have to find someone else for the next summer season. It was his house, and they were his fields, even the snow was his. When the snow melted, he would clear these fields, and nourish them, and make them rich. He felt very big and very strong as he came striding over the land he loved.